All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. We'll go ahead and get started here. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's going to be below the video if you're on a smaller screen. If you're on a larger screen, it should be to the right of the video. All right. So let's see what we got here. All right, I already got several questions in here. Good deal. And also, just want to mention, I do have some swing review spots available. So if you're interested we just sent out the email to the waiting list. So if you're interested, I'm guessing it'll probably be sold out by the end of the day. So if you're interested, make sure click the get a review link at the top of the page and you can sign up there. If you have any questions about swing reviews or anything like that, I'll be happy to answer them on here as well. So we'll start here with TJ. So TJ says, Q, how long does it take to make a swing change? I've heard it typically takes 3 to 6 months. How do you keep from getting discouraged? Thanks. I wish I could just tell you it's going to take X amount of time, but there's just too many variables and not all swing changes are created equal, right? So for example, shoulder turn, right? So if you're working on getting a bigger shoulder turn, that's typically a much easier and faster thing to do than working on changing the release of the club or changing on something that's happening in the downswing, because things are just moving a lot faster. So I wish I could tell you it's going to take X amount of time, but I don't really know, right? So, there's just no way to know, right? There's no way to know, are you going to be practicing in the right way? Are you going to be doing it? Are you going to get distracted? Are you going to be, there's just no way to know. So what I will say is that, it takes time, it takes repetition, and I just try to get 1% better every single day that you're working on it. And if you're working on it in the correct way, and there are ways to accelerate your progress as well. Working with an instructor would be one way to accelerate your progress. Going through it. If you're doing it on your own, it's most likely going to take longer than if you work through it with an instructor. Doing online unlimited swing reviews or lessons or whatever it might be, it's probably going to take longer. So it's just, I wish I could just tell you how long it would take, but that'd be irresponsible. There's just no way to really know. Basically, the way to keep from getting discouraged is just to understand that failure is part of the process. You are going to struggle. It is part of the process. So, I would liken it to learning how to do anything. If you've learned, any skill that you've learned to do, there's always been struggle, right? So you can take typing, for example, right? Typing, it took you, go back. I don't know if you can, maybe you've been typing forever, but I can think back to when I didn't know how to type, right? And I actually had thoughts of, well, I'm just not gonna use a keyboard, right? I'm not gonna worry about it because I was having trouble with it, right? And I was just like, well, if I need to, I can just point and peck. And that's basically what I did until I took a keyboarding class, right? But I pointed and pecked, and I got to where I could get fast enough, right? Because I was memorizing the keys, but it was really, really slow. It would take forever for me to type anything, and it was really, really frustrating. But then you take a class and you learn how to put your fingers on the keyboard. But even then, you're going to struggle through that because you don't really know how each finger needs to work. But then you slowly start learning. You go through the program and you start learning, and you keep doing it. You keep going. So you just got to keep going and keep working at it. And you understand that it is a struggle. You are going to struggle. You are going to fail, but that's how you succeed, right? It's not going to be clean sailing. So if you, the way that you keep from getting discouraged is understanding that there's going to be failure involved with it. And that's part of the process. There's no way around it. So you got to keep going with it, right? That's basically what I would recommend. All right. So Tom W says, Q, currently working through the 20-minute shallowing fix. Clay correctly identified my swing flaw. Aim shoulders to the right with a steep swing, an open face, false shallow move that leads to early extension and flip. Getting better at shallowing and practicing draw spin, but still cannot get the ball starting to the right. Wall drill and hit bag do not seem to help. Thanks for your assist. Slow down, do it slower, do it in a chip. Here's the thing is that the wall drill and the impact bag and putting something in the way, those are, you can't mess those up kind of drills. So I shouldn't say that. You can mess them up if you set them up incorrectly, right? So as long as you're doing those drills correctly, it's going to get you to where you want to be. It's kind of like what going up to somebody else, TJ talked about, right? Not getting discouraged. It's You're going to struggle through it. You're not going to go from however many years you've been early extending flipping to one day all of a sudden you're shallowing it out and all that stuff. It just doesn't work that way. Slow it down, break it down, go as slow as you have to go to be able to do it. Shorten the swing, if you need to get to where you can do it, and then build it up from there. That's really what you got to do. The key to progression is regression, right? So what that means is that you have to regress something to where you can actually do it and then progress it from there. Too many people are just trying to get it all the way to the end and try to do it there. Now, if you can do it there, then great. But if you can't, you have to regress it, right? So you think about it this way. If you're a weightlifter, right, and you can currently lift 200 pounds and you want to lift 300 pounds, right? Well, the way you would get there, what you wouldn't do is go and try to lift 300 pounds every day, because nothing's going to happen. You can try to lift 300 pounds every single day and it's not going to move. Nothing's going to happen. So what you have to do is you have to get better and stronger at lifting 200 pounds and maybe get to where you can do that for 2 or 3 reps, then 4 or 5 reps. And then you add a little bit of weight, and then you maybe go to 210 pounds and you do the same thing. You get stronger with that weight. You get to where you can do 4 reps, 5 reps, 6 reps, and then you go up to 220. That's the process that you have to go through until eventually you get to 300 pounds. That's how you get there. So what you may need to do is you may need to take a slower swing. You may need to take a shorter swing. You may need to try to do it without the ball at first and then add the ball, right? So you got to regress it to where you can do it and then gradually progress it from there. It breaks down, regress it again, get it right, then try to progress again. That's essentially the process you got to go through. And the other thing is that if you're able to do it with the impact bag there, but then when you remove the impact bag or the obstruction, just keep hitting more shots with the impact bag there to get more used to it, and then take it away and try it. If you're not able to do it, put it back. That's kind of the way you got to do it. All right. So Tyler K says, can you explain why the recommended technique is to square the face early in the downswing instead of in the backswing like DJ or some other pros? You can absolutely do it in the backswing too. You can do it earlier. You can do it as early as you want. You just have to keep it that way. So that's really the key. We're not saying don't do it like DJ or what a lot of tour players are doing. What we're saying is that but you have to keep it there. Well, I see a lot of people trying to do like the DJ wrist move at the top. They'll be like this at the top, and then when they start the downswing, they completely undo it, right? So what you have to make sure that you do is if you're here, you got to keep it. You got to keep it all the way there, right? So you can absolutely do it that way. It's just you got to make sure that you keep it. That's completely fine to do. Kevin S. says, if my grip is already strong and flexible, I have no problem bowing my wrist at a 90-degree angle, and I'm still going to be turning the club down at last parallel. In the beginning stages, when you are working on just trying to get the club face closed, you're trying to overdo it, right? So basically the way that the course works is you completely overdo everything, right? You really get to where it's really curving, and then you ease off of it at the end to straighten it out. So step 1 is get that face super closed. Learn how to get that face closed. Strong grip, really strong wrist angles. Get that face slamming shut. Get that ball curving from right to left. Step 2 is get the ball to start to the right for right-handed golfer. Get the ball to start to the right and curve to the left. So in order to do that, we got to shallow out the club. So step 1, close the face a ton. Step 2, shallow the club a ton. So you're going to be getting big slinging hits. Get that ball to start to the right and curve back to the left. Step 3 is toning that down, right? That's the fastest way to change anything in the golf swing, is to completely exaggerate the opposite. If you are someone who's coming down steep with an open face, then you need to learn to get the club really shallow with a closed face, and to fix that. And then once you're able to do that fairly easily, well, now we just ease off of that to get more of your stock shot, right? So that's the process that you got to go through. So that it sounds like you're in good shape. You can have a strong grip. You can get the face really, really close. That's good. It's going to be no problem for you to get that face or to get that ball curving to the left. Well, now you got to get that ball starting to the right and curving to the left. And then from there, in the last drill, you tone it down. So Holger, a swing review student of mine, and just let you guys know again, I do have some swing review spots available if you are interested. Let me check and see here. Yeah, so I have a few spots available if you're interested in working with me. They'll probably be gone by the end of the day. So if you're interested in working with me, we just sent it out to the waiting list. So if not, they will definitely be gone tomorrow. So I'm not always able to open up spots just because the demand's pretty high. So if you're interested, click the get a review link and sign up. I'm working with Holger right now. We're working on getting some divots and hitting some better shots. But Holger says, at my driving range, you're supposed to hit from the mat. A few shots off the grass are okay, but not dozens or hundreds. A divot board might help, but they don't ship to my country, and just hitting off the mat doesn't give much feedback. Do you have any idea how I could practice and get feedback? Yeah, I would recommend, this is, something like a towel is fine, but this is actually a little bit better. This is like a piece of plexiglass. This is actually from a training aid, the speed trap. You don't have to buy the speed trap, but this is basically like plexiglass, right? So any kind of like hard plastic that you can kind of lay flat on the mat would be good. And then put this down. All right, so let's say I'm going to turn this around just to make it easier. So this is the edge of the plexiglass right here. I put the ball about a club head width in front of that, right? Well, if I come down and I'm hitting the ground before the ball too much, right? I'm going to hear that, right? So what I would be doing is making swings where you're coming in, making contact, good contact with the ball, and missing that. That's going to tell you that your divot is starting somewhere around the ball. And you can have it even a little bit closer if you want. Maybe a little bit less than a club head is fine. But generally about a club head behind the ball is a good spot to be. That's going to tell you that, hey, you're coming in, you're making ball first contact. If you're coming in, you're hearing this click, right? Then you know that you're hitting the club, hitting too far behind the ball. So I don't know what's going to be available in your country. The speed trap is, a training that you can purchase, but honestly, you don't need the speed trap. Literally, you just need like a piece of plastic, a cutting board, like a plastic cutting board that's somewhat thin. If it's really thin, you may want to move it quite a bit closer to the ball. But this is probably, that's probably about an 1/8 inch thick. This is so. This could be maybe a little bit less than a club head length behind, whereas something that might be a lot thinner, you may want to put a lot closer. Something would be thicker, you'd want to move a little bit farther away. But something like this, it's not going to damage your club. It's clear plastic. It's not going to damage your club. Like a cutting board, something like that. You can use a towel too. The only thing I'd say that the downside to the towel is that it doesn't, it's hard, it's soft, right? So it can, if you're not really aware of it, it's going to be hard to know if you hit it. So, you can take like a towel, do the same thing, place it, about a club, place it flat on the ground, club. But sometimes it can be hard to know if you hit it, right? So the plastic gives a little bit better feedback, in my opinion, because you're going to hear that click sound, and you're typically going to feel it. So that would be definitely something you can do for sure. And then goes on to say, you mentioned the nail drill for getting better divots. I'm not sure if I understand correctly. Could you elaborate a bit on that drill? Yeah. So I actually have a ball with a nail in it, right? So this has got a ball with a nail going through it. So golf is a game of adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. It's really what it is. You can simplify it down to that. So what that means is, you are doing something, right? And if you want to change what you're doing, you need to adjust your feel to something the opposite. So for example, we were talking about the shallowing course before. If you're coming down steep with an open face and you feel like you're coming down perfectly on plane with a square face, that's what you're trying to do. But the reality is that you're doing something different. Then you need to feel the complete opposite. You need to feel like you're shallowing out the club a ton, and you're snapping that face shut. You're getting that face really, really close. And then you get to where you can ease off of it, right? So Holger, what he's struggling with a little bit is hitting the ball off of the heel and not making ball first contact. He's kind of hitting up on the ball. So essentially the reality of what he's doing is, if you imagine my hand here being the club face, he's coming in and hitting the club face with his fingertips here, and he's actually hitting up on the ball because his club is coming in and bottoming out before the ball. So he's essentially hitting up on the ball. So what Holger's doing is he's hitting up on the ball with with the toe of the club. So what he needs to do is he needs to feel like he's hitting down on the ball. He's like driving the nail down into the ball, right? And hitting the ball off of the heel. That's what he needs to feel like. He's driving the nail down into the ball with the heel of his club. That's what he needs to feel like, because his face and path, everything looks really good. Club's coming down on plane, everything looks good. He's just having a big dispersion because of where he's hitting on the face and where he's hitting on the ground. He's not hitting the ball real solid because of that. So he really needs to feel, the reality is that what he's kind of doing is he's coming in off of the heel and hitting up on the ball a little bit. And what he needs to do is he needs to feel like he's hitting, let's angle this down, angle that nail down. He needs to feel like he's hitting down on it and hitting that ball off of the toe on the down. That's what the nail drill is. Really driving that nail down into the ball. All right, so Billy W says, I watched Michael's recent lesson on keeping the hands ahead of the ball, ball with even the driver. Doesn't that make the low point move forward ahead of the ball? How do you accomplish hitting up on the ball when your hands are ahead of the ball at contact? Yeah, so imagine like you're hitting a topspin forehand, right? So if I'm taking this club, my hands can be in front, and that club can be moving up, right? So if I'm just going extreme with it, right, my hands are in front of the club head, and it's moving up, right? It's moving up. So if I have the ball here, hands are in front, and the club is moving up like that. So it's almost like if you were imagining you're hitting the ball with like a topspin forehand. That's what's going on. Now, you're not going to have a lot of shaft lean with the driver, right? I think you're going to have like a degree or two, right? The idea here is that the shaft's going to be pretty vertical or up on it. Keep in mind that the club is not bottoming out where the hands are, where the club is straight up and down. That's not where it's bottoming out. It does not necessarily, right? It certainly can. Like if I have it really released like this, it can bottom out right where the club's releasing. But typically, if I can be right here, and this club is going to bottom out in this area, but my club's going to release out here, right? And same thing with the driver. I'm coming in with the driver. I want to contact the ball right here, you can see there's a couple degrees of shaft lean maybe right there, but the club probably bottom out back in here, right? Because I'm letting the club come up like that. So hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, it's the geometry is probably not quite what you're thinking in your mind there. All right, let's keep going. So Dave D says, Q, if I'm working on swing mechanics with mid iron and using foot power spray impact tape on my club face, and I find I'm hitting too far out in the heel, what can I do to ensure better impact in the center of the club face? Try to hit the ball off the toe. Yeah, that's basically, if you have a tendency to hit the ball in one place, which is typically what people will have, they'll have, a center to toe tendency or a center to heel bias, something like that. And really, again, golf is a game of adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So if you're hitting the ball off of the, what you said, heel frequently, then you need to adjust your feel there. Let me make sure I read that correctly. Too far out on toe or in heel. Oh, okay. And I am hitting too far out on the toe or in the heel. Working on mechanics. Fine, I'm hitting too far out on toe or in heel. So, sorry, I misread your question a little bit. So, Dave, first of all, you need to see if there's a tendency, right? So, if there's a tendency to hit on one side of the face versus the other, then you need to feel like you're hitting off of the other side of the face, right? So, what that means is if you're finding that you hit a tendency to hit in the heel, you need to try to hit the ball in the toe. And what will likely happen is you'll hit the ball more in the center of the face. And you need to keep feeling like you're hitting the ball off the toe until eventually you actually start hitting the ball off the toe. And then your feel is matching the reality of what's going on. And then you can start hitting the ball in the center of the face. Now, if the strike is all over the place, what you can do are some variability training and differential training, where you're intentionally trying to hit the ball at different parts of the face to get better awareness for it. So you're actually trying to hit the ball off. So some differential training would be differential exercise would be to set up to the ball in the center of the face the way you normally would, and then intentionally hit the ball off the toe and count how many attempts it takes you to do that. Once you've done that, then do the same thing, set up to it the same way you normally would. Everything's the same the way you're setting up to it. You're just changing what you're doing, how the club's working through impact. So set up to it and then try to hit the ball off the heel, right? Count how many reps it takes you to do that. And then do the same thing, set up to it exactly the way that you normally would. Try to hit the ball in the center, count how many reps it takes you to do that. So let's say I started off, it took me 3 attempts to get in the toe, then 4 attempts to get in the heel, then 2 attempts to get it in the center, right? Well, that's 9 attempts total. That's my score. I'm going to do it again. I'm going to try to beat 9. And if you can get to where you can go 3 out of 3, you're going to have a pretty good control of the face. So that'd be a differential training drill. A variability training drill would be to set up differently, right? So let's set up on the toe here, and I'm going to try to hit the ball in the center of the face. And I'm going to count how many reps it takes me to get it in the center of the face. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my setup. I'm actually going to stand closer to the ball. I'm going to set up with the ball on the hosel here, and I'm going to try to hit the ball in the center of the face. I'm going to count how many reps it takes me to do that. And then I'm going to set up the way I normally would in the center of the face and try to hit the ball in the center of the face. Count how many reps it takes you to do that. You get to where you can do that 3 out of 3. You're going to be able to control your face a lot better. That would be, from a skill training standpoint, what you do. From a technical standpoint, it'd be hard to say without seeing your swing, but there's typically 2 things that make it very difficult from a technical standpoint to be able to control where you're hitting on the face. One is going to be your stable fluid spine, right? If our spine is moving all over the place in the swing, it's going to make it very, very difficult to control where you're hitting it on the face to be able to build up that skill. So that's what I'd be looking at. I'd be making sure we got some good spine tilt at address. We're maintaining that tilt as we go up to the top, and then we're getting a little bit more tilted away as we come into impact. If you're sliding this way and moving your head back and going everywhere, it's like a moving target, and your body's not going to move in a way that's going to make it easy for you to hit the ball in the center of the face. Excuse me. So the stable fluid spine will be something that I would look at. Another thing that I would be looking at is the path of the club, right? So if the path of the club is very steep and over the top, right, you're going to tend to have trouble because the club's cutting across the ball, right? And same thing, if we swing too much from the inside, so I'd be looking at the path of the club. Ideally, what we talk about in the 20-minute shallowing fix, we want to get it in that consistency cone, right? If you're way outside of that consistency cone, it's going to be difficult to get the ball in the center of the face too. So that could be a reason. So those would be the things I'd be looking at. So Coleman M says, what video could I watch about ball position with different clubs? We have a few videos on the website. If you're ever looking for a video on a specific thing, we actually have a search engine that works pretty well. So in the upper right-hand corner, if you're on the normal website, there's a search box there. Just search ball position, and there'll be a bunch of videos there. And if you're on the mobile site, you can still find the search box. It's just a little bit harder to find. If you click the hamburger icon in the upper right-hand corner, that's the icon that's got 3 horizontal lines. You select that. That will expand a menu. Scroll down to the bottom of that menu, and you'll find the search box there. You can search ball position there. But real quickly, we can talk about that. So really, I have 2 approaches to ball position. One is super minimalist and very simple, and one is slightly less minimalist and simple as well. So the first one is just a 2 ball position approach. So really, you have 1 ball position for shots that you hit off the turf, and 1 ball position for your driver where you're teeing it up. So for shots that are hit off the turf, you can literally tee up every single shot, or not tee up. You can play every single shot just forward of the middle of your stance. So if you have good spine tilt here, that would be kind of straight down from your lead ear, right? So if I'm in my good spine tilt, I hang this club from my lead ear, and I drop it straight down. That's slightly forward of the middle of my stance. I can play every single club in my bag off the ground from that position. It's a generality. It's not to say that that's the best position for you, but from in general, that's going to be a pretty dang good spot for most people for every club, right? It doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. I think people are really trying to overcomplicate the ball position, and I blame Ben Hogan a little bit for that because there's that diagram where he's got his feet changing and the ball position changing. For Ben Hogan, for someone who's able to really tighten that up and understand where the best place is, for every single club, professional golfer, yeah, that may be the right thing to go. But for recreational golfers, that is overkill, way overthinking it, in the weeds, not necessary, right? So this can work for every single shot that you hit off the turf, from wedges all the way up to the fairway woods, right? So there's there, and then the other ball position would be off of the lead foot for driver, right? So lead shoulder, put the club on the lead shoulder here, drop it straight down. That'd be a little bit too, there we go. So that would be the ball position for the driver, straight down from the lead shoulder, right? That's going to put me in a good ball position. Now, the other way that's slightly less minimalist would be a 4 ball position approach. So we still have the same driver ball position. We just, for the shots off the turf, we have 3 different ones. So we have the one that I just mentioned that's straight down from the lead ear, right? That's going to be for basically all of your irons, is where you're going to play that. Now for wedges, you can put it a ball back, right? So this would be, if this white ball is the kind of the ball position for your iron, straight down from the lead ear, the wedge would be just a ball back from that, which basically puts the ball in the middle of the stance. Why do I say that? And this is basically what I do with my ball positions. The reason why I say that is because with a wedge, if you put it just a little bit farther back in the stance, it gives you an opportunity to hit down on it a little bit more and to also de-loft it a little bit more. So more spin and lower trajectory, typically better for wedges, right? Now this can work 100% fine, but I prefer to have a little bit farther so I can drive it in a little bit lower with more spin. That's the way I like to do it. So that would be there. And then for fairway woods, maybe even your hybrids, right? fairway woods, I would play it a ball forward of that, iron ball position. So the reason why I do that is it helps you come in a little bit more shallower, helps the ball get up in the air just a little bit more, right? But I find that most people play the fairway woods too far forward in their stance. They play it more in the driver position, and that is typically going to lead to issues. You're typically going to top thin your fairway woods. So don't play those fairway woods too far forward. You need to be hitting down on them some in order to get good contact, right? So that would be kind of one ball forward that allows you to come in just a little bit shallower, still down, but a little bit shallower, and helps get the ball up in the air a little bit more. All right, let's keep going. So Dave D says, Q, assuming your takeaway and backswing mechanics are correct, what is the essential next move at the top that gets you in position to get the club and the shot shallowing correctly to give you correct out to right swing path and draw? Dave, I'd recommend working through the 20-minute shallowing fix. That's what I would recommend that you do, because there is no correct takeaway and backswing, right? There's lots of things you can do in the backswing. So depending on what you're doing in your backswing is what you need to do in your downswing. So for instance, if you look at Ricky Fowler, right? Ricky Fowler brings the club, he gets the club going out like this, and then he gets it coming back flat, right? Well, if he made the same kind of move in the downswing that Adam Scott makes, well, he would shallow the club way too much and swing way too much from the inside. He actually needs to steepen the club a little bit from that position to get the club to be shallow, right? To be where it needs to be. He actually can't go into a more shallower position, right? And if you look at Bubba Watson's here, right? He's way up here at the top of the swing. He brings that club basically straight up. Well, if he made the same move that Ricky Fowler did, well, he would swing way over the top, right? So he needs to move things in more of a shallow position. So there is no perfect takeaway, no perfect backswing mechanics. It really depends on how the club is moving, and you need to move the club in the proper way in the start of the downswing to promote the shallowing of the club, right? So I will say that no matter how your backswing is, if you work through the 20-minute shallowing fix and you work the club down, kind of feeling like you're chopping the wood kind of position, driving with the elbows, you're going to be in good shape, no matter if you're flat or if you're very upright or anywhere in between. So that's what I would recommend doing, is working through the 20-minute shallowing fix. To get to the 20-minute shallowing fix, click the instruction tab in the Top Speed Golf system, and then you can click the 20-minute shallowing fix from there. All right, so John H says, I had an aha moment yesterday on the practice range. Working on the new shallow drills, I rotated my forearms through the impact zone, causing the club face to close more naturally. I think that you get handsy when you focus on rotating the wrist. What do you think? I think everything you're talking about there is purely feels, and feels are relative. So what you're feeling and what you're actually doing are most likely two different things. We definitely rotate the hands, and we do all the things that you were talking about there. But if we do anything in excess, right, it's not going to be good, right? So everything is the effective dose that you want, right? That's what it comes down to, using the effective dose of what you're trying to do. And I know, I'm just realizing this with the last few questions. I know that the answers to the questions seem kind of wishy-washy, but that's because they are, right? There's no, the last few questions are purely, there isn't, look on the PGA Tour. You're not going to find the same, they're not all bringing the club back the same way. They're not all bringing the club down in the same way, but they're getting through impact in a very similar way. All of them, they're all kind of arriving to the same place, right? So there's lots of ways to do it. You can rotate your hands more or less, right? It's about the way that effectively works for you. That's why it's kind of what the Top Speed Golf system is all about, is that there's 5 things that every single player does. Every single one does these 5 pieces of the system, right? Everything else is kind of what works best for that player, right? You can look at those two different swings, Bubba Watson, Ricky Fowler, very, very good PGA Tour golfers. They both have, um, very different looking swings, but they are both nailing the top speed golf system. They're all doing everything in the top speed golf system. So it there's lots of ways to do it, folks. That's kind of the whole idea here. So Holger A says, when practicing something new, hitting the ball more solidly, should I first work with one club until I can do it well and only then transfer this to different clubs, or vice versa? Change the clubs regularly, even when the shots are not so good yet. I would stick with one club, and then once you start to get good with that one club, when you're practicing on something, then I would vary it up, right? Because it's going to be more difficult for you to. So that way, you're also kind of comparing apples to apples, right? If you mess up on you're getting the same feel, right? And then you can kind of get to where you can do it, and then I would work on varying the clubs that you're using. So Roy A says, working through the top speed golf system, the drills and the swing positions of the hands and forearms appear quite firm, tight. How firm should the forearms be, and how should you grip the club? So that's always a tough question, but basically, the answer to how firm you hold on to the club is essentially you hold on to it firmly enough to where you can control it, but not so firm that you can't really move, right? You want to be able to move athletically. So what I would imagine this is this way. How firmly do you hold on to a baseball or hold on to a ball when you throw it? Are you thinking about how tightly you're holding on to it? No, you are just throwing it, right? You need to have the same kind of feeling in the golf swing. You don't need to, if you're thinking about how tightly you're holding it, then you're kind of doing it wrong. So I would just do what comes more intuitive to you, because thinking about it and trying to force yourself to swing lightly or tightly on it is going to have the opposite result that you want. So I would think of it more as if you're throwing a ball, right? You're going to hold on to it enough to where you can move and be able to release it. It's the same kind of thing. And you can do this intuitively. I'll prove it to you. If you stand with the club like this in front of you, and I just want you to hold on to it tightly enough to where you can feel relaxed, right? And still hold the club up in the air. Have a buddy come and try to pull the club out of your hand. Well, what's going to happen is you're going to intuitively grip more tightly onto that club, because otherwise, if you don't, then they'll just pull it out of your hand, right? So you have a much more intuitive nature than what you think. I think people are really overthinking how tight they need to hold on to the club. It's really quite intuitive. If you actually try to think about it, is when it becomes unintuitive, right? So stop thinking about how tightly you're holding on to the club and just hold on to it in a way that allows you to move around, right? If you're finding yourself being really tight and unable to move around, then you're holding on to it too tightly. If you're finding yourself the club slipping out of your hands when you're coming through contact, then you're not holding on to it tightly enough, right? So you're going to intuitively hold on to the club, just like if you were throwing a ball, right? You're going to intuitively hold on to that ball with the tightness and then throw it, right? And then you're going to release it and let it go. So Kevin S says, on the range last night, trying to do the shallowing drills, I was hitting absolute crap. I think I hit one ball solidly. The first were really thin or hosel rockets. What was I doing wrong? Unfortunately, there is just no way for me to know. I would look on video and I would see if you are doing what you actually feel like you're doing, and then go from there. Kevin S goes on to say, not getting the club face shut, even though it felt like it. Yeah. So you need to exaggerate 10 times more. So get the grip. Your grip may not have been strong enough. I get that grip really strong, and I would get I would really try to get the club face really turning down. I would get the club face like this and really try to get that face slamming shut as you're coming through there. Now, keep in mind that when you're going through drill number 1, drill number 2, you're not going to be hitting beautiful shots, right? You're in the drill number 1, you are trying to get the ball to hook as much as you possibly can. Drill number 2, you are trying to get the ball to start to the right and hook as much as you possibly can. And then drill number 3 is where you straighten that out. Coleman M says, thanks. This is nice to have. Thanks. This is a really nice feature to have your questions answered. Yeah, no problem, Coleman. Glad to help. All right. So Bill W says, video shows good forward shaftling at impact with a 6-iron, but releasing a little early. About 1 foot or so beyond ball. I am also turning the club too much too early. Downswing is shallow from the inside. Have been working through straight line release course, but looking for further suggestions. If you have good shaftling at impact, then you're good to go. Those two don't really work together. I mean, if you either have a good release and good shaftling, or a bad release and bad shaftling. You can't really have a great amount of shaftling, good shaftling, and then a poor release, right? So, I would you either you don't really have a lot of shaftling, and maybe you think you do, or really things are fine. It's really what it comes down to. All right, let's keep the questions coming. We got almost 20 minutes, and again, I do have swing review spots available if anybody's interested. I don't always open up spots, so if you're interested, feel free to sign up. Daisy says, how important is the lie of the club to good impact? It's pretty important. If it's really far off, if it's a couple degrees off, it's not going to be like a huge difference. But if it's really far off, it can definitely make a difference. If you're coming down and the hands are really high and the toes coming really down, it's going to be difficult to hit the ball solidly, because you're raising the sweet spot, and the toe is going to want to dig before the ball, and you're going to tend to chunk it. So it's definitely important. If it's way off, if it's a couple degrees off, it's not that big a deal. But if you're coming in really, really toe down, which is the most common thing, I don't think I've ever had a student that gets the heel too far down, the toes too far up. It's almost always toe is down too much. So, and like I said, that raises the sweet spot, which makes it harder to get that. You're going to tend to hit it very thin, or you're going to tend to chunk it when the lie angle is too upright, right? So working on basically a good feel for that is to really feel like you're getting that heel to hit the ground before anything else. You're trying to lead with the heel a little bit, getting this part of the sole on the club or on the ground first. One other thing you can do is you can take an alignment stick, put it in the ground, stick an alignment stick in the ground and put it kind of over your hands like this, and then take some swings where you're forcing yourself to get your hands underneath that. Because if you swing and you come out with the high hands and the toe down, you're going to hit that, right? So taking some swings where you're really forcing the hands to get underneath that can be a good drill as well. So Dan Skay says, I'm fascinated by Daniel Berger's backswing. Doesn't seem very high, but extremely wide. Yet it hits it with such great control. Could you possibly comment on his swing? Yeah, he's a really good tennis player. So I think a lot of it's like kind of short and compact, like a like a tennis stroke would be. And he really likes to really bow his wrist a ton, and then he really turns through it. So he's already got that club really, really shallow at the top. It's actually too shallow, and he actually needs to kind of steepen it as he's coming down a little bit. So he brings it up like this and then steepens it a little bit and then really turns through. And he really holds the face off a lot, gets a lot of shaft lean, holds the face off a lot, and he tends to like to hit fades. So that's definitely a fine way to do it. But for most golfers, it's not a good way to do it because you're going to lose a little bit of distance when you do that. So most golfers are going to tend to do better swinging more from the inside, closed face, stronger distance. That's why we have to be careful looking at what pros do and trying to copy what they do, because what they do may be what works really well for them and not work well for everybody else. So a lot of tour players have speed. He has a good amount of speed. Dustin Johnson has a good amount of speed. Brooks Koepka has a good amount of speed. All these players that are hitting these fades, right, that tend to hit fades, generally have a lot of speed. There aren't a lot of players on the PGA Tour that hit fades that don't have any good players anyway. Any players that are always kind of in the mix in those big tournaments, right? Those players that are in the mix in the big tournament that hit fades, they're long hitters. They're way longer than average hitters. And you have to be if you hit that kind of shot, because you lose distance when you hit a fade. So for them, because they de-loft it so much, they need to hit a fade to get the ball up in the air a little bit more and to have a little bit more control of it. So for them, that works really well. But for most recreational golfers, I highly recommend that you hit draws. It's just going to be a way more powerful shot, especially for most recreational golfers that don't get a ton of shaft length, right? So if we hit a draw, we're closing the face to the path, closing the face, de-lofts the face. That's a more powerful shot. So less spin, more power. You're gonna generally play better golf when you do that. So that's why I generally recommend almost every single recreational golfer should be hitting draws. At the very least, you should learn to hit a draw, and if you want to hit fades, learn how to shallow it out, hit shallow fades, right? Because that's what they're doing. They're hitting shallow fades. So what that means is most recreational golfers who are hitting fades, they're coming down steep over the top, and then they're kind of cutting across the ball, early extending, flipping, and hitting like a weak kind of fade. Tour players who are hitting fades, they're shallowing out the club, right? This club is shallow, but they're really turning their hands hard to the left through impact, getting the hands ahead, and then they're kind of holding off the face, right? So they're getting more shaft lean, and they're basically kind of holding that face open and then hitting that fade out there, right? So it just, it's tough. In those players too will tend to only really be able to hit fades. Not all players, but Daniel Berger, for example, he hit that ball in the water on 16 because he hit a fade, and that shot did not, because of the way the wind was going. You definitely didn't want to hit a fade there, because it was just he would have had to start that ball so far to the left because it rode the wind, and it just had no chance of staying out of the water because of that. So the wind is just going to make it curve way more than what it actually does. So in that situation, he would have been much better off hitting a draw kind of against the wind and kind of holding it up against the wind, and just letting the wind kind of just take it over there. Whereas because he can only really hit fades, that's all he really does is hit fades. He would have had to. He even started it left of the flag, right, or left of the green, and it's still faded a ton, right? So he would have had to started that. He would have had to hung it out, over near the trees to get that to be on the green, and it would have been still kind of going toward. It would have been hard when it hit the green to keep it from not rolling off into the water. So probably wasn't the best shot by him there. Probably should have. I don't think he can. I've never really. It's been a while since I've seen him really hit any kind of draws. It can really work well for you, because if you're holding off the face, those players definitely feel like if they're not kind of rolling the hands over, that they're kind of holding it off, that they can just kind of control. They just keep that face where it is. They feel like they can control it more. But there are instances where I'm all for somebody having a stock shot, right? But you need to be able to hit it both ways to be to be successful, to really take your game to the next level. So I recommend most people's stock shot being a draw, and then when you do need to fade it, you can do that. All right, so let's keep going. So Anthony A says, in doing the new shallowing drill number 1, I'm able to produce a straight pull to extreme left with very little no curve. Your thoughts, please. You need to get it curving. You got to get it curving. You're not getting the face closed enough. You got to get the ball curving. You can't move on to drill number 2 until you get the ball curving. You need to get the face closed to your path. So if you're just hitting it left, that means that your face is in line with your path, right? So you're swinging over the top to hit it left. You need to get the face closed to your path. So strengthen the grip more and really feel like you're closing that face down more as you're coming down by strengthening those wrist angles, bowing that lead wrist. You're doing this to hit it left, and what you need to do is you need to do that to hit it left. Get that face slammed shut to hit it left. So Don says, on the downswing, I get the sense that the club is close to my body, and I do draw the ball. Is that okay sensation, or should I feel coming down? I seem to whip the club through impact when I feel it closer to my body, but a little go too far left with the draw. So, Don, feelings are relative, right? So what you feel and what I feel and what is a good feel and a bad feel is completely subjective and relative. So it's like an impossible question for me to answer because what the reality of what's going on, what's actually going on are going to be two different things. So if you're getting good contact with whatever feel it is, then I would stick with that feel. If it's poor contact or bad ball flight from a field, then I would probably try to find a different feel or get out the camera, see what the reality of what's going on, and go from there. Or work with a coach, doing swing reviews or something like that. So Mick S says, "Hi Q, as always, a great session again. Q, I seem to hit the ball further and more solidly when swinging effortlessly. Could this be because I'm getting the sequence correct, or do you think I should be looking to give it some?" Again, these are all feels, guys. You feel like you're swinging effortlessly. Is that the reality of what's going on? Not necessarily. So what I would say is that if you are hitting the ball well with a feeling, stick with it. If you're not, then try a different feeling or work with a coach to get to on the right track. There's just no way for me to know what you should be feeling or what you should be doing without seeing your swing and understanding what your feels are currently. So that's what it comes down to. Golf is a game of adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So there's just no way for me to know. Jack Nicklaus said he felt like he was releasing the club as hard and as fast as he possibly could. Now, would that be a good feel for most recreational golfers? It would be a terrible feel for most recreational golfers because most recreational golfers are already releasing the club too early. So if they had that same feeling that Jack did that helped him hit the ball better, they would actually hit it worse, right? So you got to be – there's just no way for me to know, unfortunately. So Holgray says, for a relative beginner, how would you prioritize the golf topics, swing, irons, driver, short game, bunkers, and the like, putting, God knows what else? I'm asking because sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed, although I'm aware that things take time. Currently, I think of it like this. First, get the iron swing right, then the driver, then short game, then putting. What do you think? I think you work on whatever's the biggest problem, right? So the easiest way, and this is whether you're a beginner or a tour player, right? If you're looking to improve, if you're looking to improve, you got to look at what is the worst aspect. What is the thing when I go out and play that's costing me the most strokes, right? And I would work on that specific thing. I put more time into that specific thing, and I would turn that weakness into a strength. And I would work on everything else too, but just to maintain my current level, right? So the things that you do well, you don't want to forget, let's say putting is your strength, right? But you really struggle with the driver. I'm not saying you need to spend all your time working on your driver and forget about your putting. No, you need to put more time on your driver and then work on your putting enough to maintain that good level that you have, right? So that's what it comes down to. So there's no blueprint for this is exactly how much you need to work on every little thing because everybody's a little bit different. Everyone has strengths and weaknesses. So you got to look at what is the thing that is stopping me from shooting my best scores, right? And what is if there's one thing I can improve about my golf game that would make me shoot lower scores, what would it be? And I would put more time into that thing. That's really what it comes down to. It's as simple as that. So Don says, I hear you talking about forward shaft lean address. Does that promote, among other things, in shutting the face at impact? Or is there some other reason for promoting forward shaft lean at address? It's really a personal preference. You can have the club like this. You can have the club like this. Or anywhere in between. It's really personal preference. So really what it comes down to is a good address position sets up a good backswing. A good backswing sets up a good transition. A good transition sets up a good downswing. A good downswing sets up a good impact, right? So you set up in the way that promotes all of those other things in the swing. If you setting up like this helps you to get into a better position at impact, then that's what you should do. If you setting up like this helps you get into a better position at impact, then that's what you should do. So you look on tour, you're going to see all kinds of different things, right? You're going to see Alex Noren, right? Alex Noren sets up with a ton of shaft lean address, and you're going to see Adam Scott, who sets up with the club pretty much straight up and down. So it's really about what works best for you. That's kind of seems like that's been the theme of this whole office hours, or people are looking, and I understand why, right? Everyone's looking for the thing that's going to change everything for them. And really what it comes down to is there's only really 5 things in the golf swing that all the best players do. Everything else is kind of really what works best for you. And there's lots and lots of ways to do it. Look at the PGA Tour. There's lots of different golf swings out there. Cameron Smith's golf swing looks a lot different than Rory McIlroy's golf swing, right? There's big differences in their golf swings, but what are they all doing? Every single player that played in that Players Championship is doing the top speed golf system. Every single one. But they all a lot of them have very, very different looking golf swings because there are things in between there that you can be doing that match up well with each other. So at the address position, you just kind of have to find. So I would say the best way to kind of find what works best for you is to go to both ends of the spectrum. If you're not sure what works best for you, go from one of the spectrum to the other. So what that means is if you're trying to find the position. Now for me, what I do is I just let my arm, I'm not thinking about having my hands forward or back. I literally just let my arms kind of hang down. I get into an athletic position and I just let my arms hang down, and that's where they are. So that's kind of my address position right there. There's some shaft lean there, but it's not, I'm not pushing my hands forward or forcing myself. If I have my hands in any other way, I would have to kind of move them into that place. So I just let my arms kind of hang down so I can move athletically. But that doesn't mean that that's what works best for you. So I would hit some shots where you're like this at address. I know seems silly, but you gotta understand what happens when you have your hands in different positions at address. So I would go extreme like this, and then I'd go a little bit less. Now I have it more straight up and down. Now I have a little bit forward, a little bit more forward, and then I'd hit somewhere your extreme forward. Hit a few balls from every position. Somewhere in between there is going to be what works best for you. So that's kind of the best way to go about anything, right? Ball position with the driver. You can play it way back here and play it from various positions, and find somewhere in between there is going to be the position that works best for you. All right. Thanks everybody for joining me. We'll be back here tomorrow. So we got one more question here, and then we'll wrap up here from Bill W. So this will be the last question here from Bill W. It says, follow-up question, forward shaft lean at impact with 6 iron is 7 to 10 degrees. Well, with 6 iron, trying to release. Yeah, so you don't have a lot of shaft. That's not a lot of shaft lean. Typically a tour player is going to have, 11 to 13 degrees of shaft lean. Yeah, I would have to see what's going on there, but from a geometric standpoint, I just don't know how it's possible to have that much shaft lean and to release the club only that far in front, because either you're not measuring the release correctly, or or you don't really have that much shaft lean. It's one or the other. So something is off there. But anyway, everybody have a good rest of your day, and I will talk to y'all next time.